Hello, it's Lewis here in the newsroom, back with another episode of Newscast. Well, a shorter podcast today, but nonetheless an important discussion with David Brew from the Manx National Farmers Union. He's the chairman of Crops, and after a fortnight or so of sunshine, we in the news team wanted to know how the ground on the Isle of Man was faring and what impact it was having on cereal crops. Remember, we're expecting another week or so of these weather conditions. Due to racing and the roads being closed, I couldn't get to David in person, but we managed to catch up over the phone.
It hasn't really rained for, I would say, probably about 18 days or something like that, anyway. And it's been quite hot as well, which obviously causes a lot of evaporation. I don't think you're at crisis point yet for crops, but that could very soon be reached, because I think the forecast for the forthcoming week is also for very dry weather and hot weather. So, yeah, I think that could very well be reached very quickly. Yeah.
So at what point, like you say, would you start to get concerned and really sort of hoping for rain?
Well, as I said, if it doesn't rain really in the next sort of 7 to 10 days, I think you'll start to see crops starting to suffer quite badly. And once they do, even if it rains after that point, crops really won't recover. The damage will be done because you'll have a potential yield that can be achieved, and that declines if a crop gets sort of stunted in its growth cycle, and it'll never really recover from that.
So during these dry periods, are you looking ahead and thinking, we've had several weeks now without rain? Is that adjusting your later in the year when you harvest those crops and working out the diary for the year ahead?
Well, to a certain extent, the arable sector and the crop sector here on the island is sort of already in crisis point, obviously, with the closure of Ramsey Bakery and the knock-on effect that's had on the cereal sector here. So to a certain extent, it's already in crisis. And of course, if we have a serious drought in the next few weeks, which is entirely possible because we seem to have extremes of weather at the moment, whether it be extreme rainfall or extreme drought, and that seems to be the cycle of things at the moment. And I don't. Obviously, we are suffering some form of climate change, but at the moment on the ground, we're not exactly too sure how to cope with it, to be fair, and what repercussions that will have going forward either.
You mentioned the closure of Ramsey Bakery as well. In general terms, what's the feedback you're hearing from the other cereal producers on the Isle of Man?
Very, very despondent, because in reality, to replace that lost tonnage is pretty well impossible, because to export that tonnage really isn't viable. So then what growers had to do is potentially look at alternatives, and at the moment those alternatives are very thin on the ground, and people are just quite puzzled as to how to go forward, really.
And from communication-wise with the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture as well, what talks have been held recently to kind of combat this situation?
Very few, to be fair. Politicians tend to make the right noises and maybe say the right things, but generally speaking, action is very slow, if none at all. So, yeah, there's been very, very little really sort of in positive action coming out of government and DEFRA. Although we are ongoing talking to them, obviously.
Obviously, it's a TT at the moment. Everyone's soaking up the sunshine and really enjoying the lack of disruption to the racing schedule. But spare a thought for the farmers. Would that be the message?
Well, it's one of those. I think food is probably one of those things over probably the last 40 to 50 years that people have taken for granted, and it may not be. So going forward, it may not be one of those things that you have to take for granted that it'll always be there in plentiful supply, and obviously, the different situations that are happening in the world at the moment with regards to the war in Ukraine and how quickly things can change. Food security for the island is a very important issue, and I think politicians really need to take it more seriously. But yes, I mean, for the holidaymakers and the visitors over for the TT, I mean, the weather is fantastic. But these changes that we've seen obviously is having an effect on the cost of living and food inflation, and yeah, it's something that people shouldn't take for granted, really.
David Brew, the chairman of Crops for the Manx National Farmers Union there. Well, speaking on the Mannin Line last month, the Environment, Food and Agriculture Minister says it's absolutely right that the island has plans in place should food supplies become strained. DEFRA is currently working on a food security plan. Claire Barber says challenges presented by COVID and Brexit show the need to not take access to food for granted.
Food security is another area actually where I've certainly been on a real learning curve, and there's lots of talk about food security, but really for me it falls under 4 pillars. The purest form of food security is the availability of food on a day-to-day basis in a location and for individuals there. And we know that the reality on the Isle of Man is that a large amount of that is provided by our import routes, but we do have local produce, and absolutely it's right that, in my opinion, we seek to increase the amount of local produce and therefore look at where we've got opportunities for import substitution, and that's something that DEFRA are keen to work towards, and we're developing a food security plan at present. But then there's also some other elements around food security. So there's the availability of good quality food and nutrition, and the ability and awareness of people around those topics. There's also the availability of food for everyone, regardless of whether it's on the shelves, but the ability to actually access it, and then that ties into the food banks and access to food for individuals in whatever given set of circumstances they have. And then finally, there's the piece that I think probably gets talked about the most, which is what happens when all of those things can't be put in place or something goes wrong. What's our backup plan? And that's very much what we saw, I think, around COVID. We've seen to some extent, off the back of Brexit, the challenges we can have around access to food through our usual routes. And it's absolutely right that we've got plans in place around that. And there are extensive plans, actually, even talking about things such as rationing and having all of that there just in case we were to need it. But those things are the things we hope we'd never have to use, but it's absolutely right that we make sure are up to date and all the information is there.
Claire Barber, Environment, Food and Agriculture Minister there. That's all for this episode. I've been Lewis Guramayed, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.